Welcome back, everyone. Today we're stepping into the charming world of Anne of Green Gables, but with a twist. This beloved 1985 classic might look peaceful on the surface, yet behind the scenes it's filled with strange stories, surprising details, and quirky moments most fans have never heard. Get ready, because we're uncovering 14 weird and wonderful facts about Anne, Avonlea, and the making of this timeless masterpiece.
It was engineered to feel like it. Soft light washing over every frame. A world designed to slow your breathing. A memory that seems effortless, because the effort was hidden. But behind the storybook glow, the puff sleeves, the gentle music, it was pressure disguised as peace. A year-long search through 3,000 girls, ending in one moment that revealed Anne. Marilla wasn't just portrayed. Colleen Dewhurst shaped the heart of Avonlea, and Green Gables was never one house, but an illusion assembled piece by piece to feel like home. These are 14 weird facts about Anne of Green Gables, where warmth was built the hard way and struggle became serenity. Step into Avonlea. This is where the illusion began. Number 1. Kevin Sullivan didn't fall in love with Anne of Green Gables the proper way. He didn't discover it curled up with a novel. He didn't reread it and get swept away. He got a phone call, a proposal, a business opportunity that sounded interesting, even though he hadn't actually read the book yet. All he really had was a faint memory of a teacher reading Anne aloud back in 5th grade. That was it. No obsession, no blueprint, just a title that felt familiar and a gut feeling it might work. So instead of racing to the pages, Sullivan raced to the paperwork. He started hunting down who actually owned the dramatic rights, and what should have been simple turned into a long, messy rights puzzle. Only after he solved the legal maze did he fully commit and step into the role of writer, director, and producer himself. Anne didn't begin as nostalgia. It began as a gamble, one on paperwork before story. Number 2. In the original Anne of Green Gables, Anne arrives fast, almost like a gust of red hair and words. The book opens with Rachel Lynde noticing Matthew Cuthbert heading to the station, and before you can settle in, Anne is already on the road to Green Gables. Her earlier life is there, but mostly as shadows and hints. Kevin Sullivan didn't want hints. He wanted cause and effect, because a child with that much imagination isn't performing, she's surviving. So Sullivan, working with co-writer Joe Wiesenfeld, reached backward and widened Anne's life before Prince Edward Island. He brought forward the Mrs. Hammond years, the overcrowded house, the endless children, the grinding routine. In the novel, those details are barely touched. In the miniseries, they become a quiet explanation for everything Anne is. Not melodrama, just neglect, exhaustion, and a girl learning the one skill that can't be taken from her, escaping into her own mind. And once you've seen that, Anne's arrival at Green Gables stops feeling like the story begins. It feels like a rescue. Then Sullivan made a second change that seems smaller, but reaches farther. He nudged the setting forward. Montgomery's world is rooted in the 1880s, shaped by her childhood. Sullivan pushed it closer to the Edwardian era, aiming for a look that felt softer, brighter, and more welcoming for modern audiences. But that tweak does something wild. It quietly rewires Anne's future. Move the timeline forward, and suddenly, later adaptations can place Gilbert in World War I, something the original book's chronology doesn't naturally support the same way. So with two choices, Sullivan didn't just adapt Anne. He built her emotional origin in sharper relief, and shifted the calendar she'd be living under. Same girl, same Green Gables, a deeper wound underneath it, and a different clock ticking in the distance. Number 3. Casting Annie Shirley was never going to be simple. For Kevin Sullivan, it turned into a full-blown national hunt. The kind where everyone has an opinion, everyone has a real Anne in their head, and one wrong choice could sink the entire miniseries before it ever aired. And the search didn't start in a casting office. It started with a legend. One day, Sullivan got an unexpected phone call from Katharine Hepburn. Hepburn had once wanted to play Anne herself back in the 1934 era, and she never let that character go. Now, decades later, she had a suggestion. Fly to California and audition her niece, Skylar Grant. Sullivan did, and Grant genuinely impressed him. Natural red hair, freckles, expressive face, emotional steadiness. For a moment, it felt like the problem might already be solved. Then reality slammed the door. Because Anne of Green Gables was sacred Canadian ground, the CBC and Telefilm Canada insisted the role had to go to a Canadian actress. No exceptions, not even for a Hepburn recommendation. So Sullivan went back to square one, and the square got enormous. Over the next year, auditions stretched from Newfoundland to Vancouver. More than 3,000 girls were seen. Sullivan quickly realized he wasn't looking for cute or precious. He needed stamina, training, emotional range. A kid who could carry a multi-night event almost entirely on her shoulders. Early in that process, Megan Follows showed up, and at first, she didn't pop. She felt a little too old. Her first read came off too modern. A second screen test in costume was, by Sullivan's own description, mediocre. Most productions would have quietly moved on right there, but something about her stayed in his head. Then came the callback that changed everything. On the day of her next audition, disaster hit at home. Follows' toilet overflowed and flooded the house. Water pouring through the floor. Panic. panic, stress. She arrived late, flustered, rattled. No polish, no calm, no perfect audition voice. And that's when Anne showed up, because the chaos stripped away the performance mask and revealed something raw, impulsive, wired, emotionally exposed, the exact storm Anne lives inside every day. Follows later said, "It just seemed to click." Sullivan felt it instantly too. That wasn't an actress demonstrating Anne, that was a girl becoming her. And Follows wasn't casually hoping. She wanted it with a kind of intensity that bordered on superstition. She wrote affirmations like, "I am Anne of Green Gables," and taped them around her house. She understood the weight, the scrutiny, the fact that some viewers would fight any version that didn't match the Anne they grew up with. She took the risk anyway, and the final twist is almost perfect. Skylar Grant didn't disappear. She shifted into place and became Diana Barry, the friend who makes Anne's world feel safe. One phone call from Katharine Hepburn, 3,000 auditions, a flooded bathroom, and one stressed, late arrival that finally revealed the Anne everyone had been chasing. Number 4. Playing Anne Shirley wasn't just emotionally intense, it was chronologically violent, because Anne of Green Gables wasn't shot in a neat growing up order. It was shot like most productions. Whatever location was ready, whatever weather cooperated, whatever schedule didn't collapse. And that meant Megan Follows would arrive on set and get handed an impossible assignment. Be Anne at 12. Now be Anne at 14. Now jump to 16 and a half. Sometimes before the day was even over. And if that sounds like a small acting shift, it isn't. Those years are an entire personality renovation. 12-year-old Anne is a spark. She rushes into the world like she can talk her way out of anything. She's pure nerve, pure imagination, pure hunger for belonging. But by 16, Anne has started building armor. She's romantic, self-conscious, more careful with her heart. She still dreams, but now she's aware the world can bruise you for it. So Follows couldn't just play younger or play older. She had to switch mental weather on command. Her secret weapon wasn't some fancy actor trick. It was the physical world around her. Wardrobe and hair became her emotional steering wheel. When her hair was braided and she was in the orphan dress and worn shoes, her posture changed without thinking. Her walk softened. Her reactions came quicker, more impulsive. Costuming wasn't just continuity. It was the bridge that helped her cross ages without getting lost. And then there's the moment where the line between performance and real fear basically disappears. The White Sands Hotel recital scene, when Anne performs The Highwayman, isn't memorable because it's polished. It's memorable because it's alive. According to Kevin Sullivan, this was new territory for Megan Follows. So the nerves you feel aren't a choice. They're real. She's standing there, exposed, delivering dramatic poetry in front of a room full of people, and the camera catches what you can't fake. The tight hands, the contained tremble, the locked focus of someone trying not to fall apart. It lands so hard because Anne isn't the only one standing on that stage. Megan is too. Even the location adds a strange kind of ghost story. That scene was filmed at the real Windermere House, a grand hotel that later burned down in 1996 while it was being used as a location for another film. The building vanished. The moment didn't. That's why Anne's growth feels so honest. It wasn't crafted in a comfortable straight line. It was lived in pieces. Childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, swapped like costume changes. Not seamless, not easy, just real enough to hurt. Number 5. Casting Gilbert Blythe was turning into a quiet emergency. The production had its Anne, the world was taking shape, and the schedule was tightening. But Gilbert, the one character who has to match Anne's fire without smothering it, still was not locked. Kevin Sullivan was already leaning toward another actor, because time makes you do that. You pick, you move, you hope. Then the answer showed up from the least glamorous place imaginable. Casting director Diane Pauley went to a local high school production of The Wizard of Oz. In the middle of all that school play energy, one performer jumped out. Not famous, not trained for television, just a presence that felt instantly specific. Pauley did not wait for a committee to agree. She snapped a photo of him at Disneyland, rushed to Sullivan's office, dropped it on his desk, and basically called the shot. This is Gilbert. The actor was Jonathan Crombie. He came in without a resume that screams leading man. No screen credits, no camera comfort, mostly school plays and amateur theater. He auditioned like someone who did not realize the weight of what he was walking into. And when the call came saying he got the part, he was shaking so badly he could barely speak. It was his first on-screen role, which is almost unbelievable considering what happened next. Crombie did not play Gilbert like a glossy romantic idea. He built him as a real boy, teasing, warm, competitive, awkward, in the way teenagers actually are. Someone who pokes at Anne because he is fascinated by her, then grows up enough to respect her. For an entire generation, that smile did not just represent Gilbert Blythe. It became the default image in people's heads. And the set energy that shaped that warmth was not stiff or precious. It was alive. During the spelling bee scene, Crombie decided to quietly wreck his own cool. Instead of playing Gilbert as smooth competition, he leaned into being hilariously terrible. Megan Follows kept losing it between takes, laughing so hard she could not reset. Even serious moments had cracks of laughter. Follows and Colleen Dewhurst would exchange looks when Sullivan gave intensely earnest direction. Lines like "tremble with excitement," delivered with total sincerity. That kind of environment matters. Trust makes chemistry easier. Playfulness makes affection feel real. And it almost did not happen at all. One school play, one photo, one last-second decision. Sometimes casting casting is not about finding the most experienced actor. It is about recognizing the right spirit before the moment passes. Number 6. Colleen Dewhurst was told not to do Anne of Green Gables. Her agent saw television, literary adaptation, quiet domestic story, and treated it like a career detour. Dewhurst heard something else. She remembered the book, not as homework, not as a classic, as a childhood memory. She later described it as the first book she truly remembered her mother reading to her after those earliest bedtime stories. So when Marilla Cuthbert showed up, it did not feel like a role to take. It felt like something to protect. She said yes immediately, and on set, she brought that personal gravity into every corner of the production, even the messy ones. Dewhurst was a legendary stage actress with a huge presence, but memorization was not her greatest strength. When lines slipped, she did not freeze. She kept the moment alive. She would invent placeholders on the spot, tossing out words like boofers, hoosagiggies, and whatchamacallits mid-sentence, as if Marilla's strict mind had hit a pothole and refused to admit it. During the dinner scene with Miss Stacy, she kept mangling a longer speech and replaced "your feather-brained ways" with improvised phrasing that somehow landed even sharper, including a version like "your absent-minded opinions" and "the noise of your own mouth." Instead of weakening the scene, it made the set warmer. The cast would crack up. Retakes happened because Dewhurst's instincts were so alive that even her mistakes carried character. Nothing felt stiff or museum perfect. It breathed. Her influence also reached beyond her own performance. Jonathan Crombie arrived with no on-camera experience at all. This was his first real screen role. Dewhurst pulled him aside early and gave him advice that became a compass for him. In period work, you do not just learn the dialogue. You learn the daily reality, how people sit, how they hold emotion back, what society lets them say out loud, what they swallow. Crombie later said that lesson shaped how he approached acting from that point forward. But Dewhurst's most important impact was not a line. It was a missing emotional truth. After filming Matthew's death, she went to Kevin Sullivan with a quiet concern. In the novel, Marilla finally says what she has buried the whole time, that Anne is her own flesh and blood. Dewhurst believed that without a moment like that, Marilla's arc stayed incomplete. The audience would sense the love, but never get the release. Sullivan listened. That morning, on set, he wrote a short scene. They filmed it fast, roughly 45 minutes, 3 takes, no spectacle. Just Marilla and Anne, grief pressing so hard that restraint finally gives way to honesty. That scene exists because Dewhurst asked for it, and it became one of the most devastating moments in the entire production. She did not just portray Marilla, she finished her. Number 7. Anne of Green Gables didn't just cast a community, it quietly became one. And when Kevin Sullivan needed something that felt real, especially from children, he didn't gamble on child actor magic. He reached for the one thing you can't fake: family. The clearest example is Minnie May Barry. Diana's little sister becomes the emotional landmine of the miniseries because her croup scene isn't cute drama, it's panic. It's a child fighting for air while adults scramble, terrified. Sullivan cast his own 4-year-old niece, Morgan Chapman, and even he admitted later he didn't know how she'd handle something that intense. On the day, the set was hot, loud, and overwhelming. Morgan got tired, confused, and then she started sobbing. The camera kept rolling, and what landed on screen wasn't a polished performance. It was raw emotion breaking through, the kind that makes the whole house feel like it's holding its breath. Sullivan has also been careful about the boundary. Her parents were right there. She was generally happy on set, and the upset was temporary and closely watched. The power came from catching something honest in a safe space, not from pushing a kid too far. Once you notice that instinct, you see it elsewhere. Morgan returned in the sequel, other relatives quietly appeared in small roles, and even Megan Followes' mother shows up on screen. None of it was sold as a gimmick. It was practical, intimate casting that kept the world feeling warm, familiar, and quietly believable. That's why Avonlea doesn't feel like a production that rolled in and vanished. It feels like a place that already had roots. Number 8. In Anne of Green Gables, Anne Shirley's puffed sleeves are not a cute costume detail. They are a declaration, a little fantasy made visible. The kind of dream Anne clings to because she has spent her whole life being told she does not get to want things. And those sleeves did not just happen. They were engineered. The costume team had to physically stuff them with extra fabric so they would stand up tall and exaggerated, exactly the way Anne imagined them. It was structure, not styling. And when the stuffing was accidentally forgotten in later scenes, the difference was instant. The puff collapsed. The magic flattened. Kevin Sullivan caught it right away. So the cast started protecting the illusion themselves. Megan Followes later said the actors began stuffing the sleeves on their own, determined to make them the puffiest puffs possible, like they were defending Anne's dream by hand, one scene at a time. And once you know that, the sleeves feel less like wardrobe and more like a promise they refused to break. But the sleeves were only the visible fight. Under the dresses was the real war zone. Corsets, layers, restriction, and period undergarments that turned every long day into a quiet endurance test. Authenticity demanded it. Colleen Dewhurst refused to suffer for it. According to Sullivan's DVD commentary, she lasted only a few days before she was done, flatly refusing to keep wearing a corset. Megan Followes reached her breaking point too. By the time filming wrapped on Anne of Green Gables, the sequel, in 1986, Sullivan later revealed she burned her corset in a bonfire, not as a publicity stunt, as a private release. Months of being laced into the past, ending in one small act of rebellion. million. Even Anne's red hair caused trouble. The green of her dress is sometimes photographed wrong, flattening into gray on camera, so the color had to be enhanced later to keep that iconic contrast alive. Fiery red against hopeful green. So when Anne spins, glowing, sure, she finally looks the way she is supposed to. Remember what it took. Stuffed fabric, refused corsets, a bonfire goodbye, color fixes to keep the dream vivid. Those puff sleeves were not just costume design, they were a victory. Number 9. That dreamy Lady of Shalott moment looks effortless on screen. Behind the camera, it was a little engineering nightmare. The sequence was shot in 2 different places. Close-ups were filmed in a swamp outside Toronto, while wider shots were captured in a pond. The problem? Neither location had a natural current, so the boat would just sit there like a prop, not a drifting tragedy. So the crew became the current. To sell the illusion, the prop team literally stripped down and waded into thick, filthy, leech-infested water, swimming under the boat and physically towing it forward so it looked like it was gliding on its own. And the sinking beats were even more precise. They filmed the boat filling with water near shore, then repositioned it out in the pond so Megan Follows could sit upright. A crew member hidden beneath the boat manually pulled it under at the exact moment Anne lunges for the pier. What feels like one seamless scene is actually a puzzle, cut together from risky, miserable little pieces. Number 10. Anne of Green Gables looks like the kind of production where every choice was made slowly, carefully, and in the right order. Cast the faces, build the world, roll the camera. That is not what happened. To keep the production moving, Kevin Sullivan filmed major material before all the actors were fully locked in. Not little filler shots. Real story texture. The kind of imagery you build the whole spell around. Several sweeping exterior moments were captured early with a body double standing in for Anne. Wide shots of Anne moving through the countryside, framed in autumn leaves and winter air, already in the can before Megan Follows officially had the role. The face did not matter yet. The feeling did. Sullivan was banking on the idea that the right Anne would arrive later and pour a soul into images that already existed. Then the gamble got sharper. Richard Farnsworth, who became the definitive Matthew Cuthbert, was still in negotiations while the production pushed ahead. Certain key sequences were staged with a stand-in, including moments tied to big story beats like the panic surrounding Minnie May's illness. Sullivan later admitted it was a serious risk, because if Farnsworth had walked, those scenes could have become expensive ghosts. Beautiful footage. No real Matthew to anchor it. Even after the cast was finalized, doubles were used at times for Farnsworth and Colleen Dewhurst when scheduling conflicts hit, with close-ups captured later to complete the illusion. And that is what makes the finished miniseries feel almost unreal, because the calm you see on screen was built on moving forward without guarantees. Anne of Green Gables did not wait for certainty. It moved on instinct, nerve, and momentum, and somehow the right faces stepped into the frame, like they were always there. Number 11. You can spot the lie before anyone says a word. Those famous red roads of Avonlea, they didn't exist where the cameras were rolling. The production had to make them. Southern Ontario stood in for Prince Edward Island, and the crew went so far as to dye roads red, dress historic villages, and angle shots like they were hiding a modern world just off frame. Westfield became Avonlea. Dune became Rachel Lynne's world. Museums and schoolhouses became Anne's classrooms. By the end, the trick worked so well, it rewired memory. Millions of viewers didn't just watch PI, they learned it from a place that wasn't PI at all. Not because Sullivan didn't want the real place, because the budget couldn't survive it. A long television shoot on the island was too expensive, too slow, too logistically messy. So Sullivan did something bolder. He rebuilt Avonlea somewhere else and trusted the camera to make the lie feel true. Southern Ontario became the stand-in, and the crew didn't fake it politely. They engineered it. Roads were literally dyed red to mimic PI's famous soil. Historic villages were dressed and repurposed until they stopped looking like Ontario locations and started looking like memory. Westfield Heritage Village became the heart of Avonlea. Doane Heritage Village doubled for Rachel Lynne's world. A turn-of-the-century schoolhouse at the Simcoe County Museum became Anne's classroom. Even the Ridgepole Walk, one of the most beloved images in the story, was staged at Pickering Museum Village. Then, the production filled in the rest like a puzzle. University buildings stood in for Queen's College. Spadina Museum became Aunt Josephine's elegant home. Shot by shot, Ontario was reshaped into a place it wasn't, and almost nobody ever noticed. And there's a final twist that makes it feel almost fated. Avonlea was inspired by Cavendish, Montgomery's hometown on PI. Yet many of the Ontario locations used for filming set not far from Leaskdale, where Montgomery later lived and wrote. The geography drifted. The spirit quietly circled back. That's why the miniseries lasts. It didn't just capture a setting. It manufactured one so carefully that it became the real Avonlea in people's minds. Number 12. Green Gables wasn't found. It was assembled. Not one cozy house waiting to be filmed, but a Frankenstein of locations. A front from one real farm, a back from another, and every interior rebuilt on a soundstage so the quiet moments could be controlled like theater. The famous fence was constructed for the camera. The paint, the angles, the peaceful frame, all engineered to hide a busy modern road and an active working property just outside the shot. And that's the genius of it. Green Gables feels like home because it was designed the way memories are designed, by selecting the right pieces and erasing the seams. Kevin Sullivan built it the same way the story builds comfort, piece by piece. And he hid the seams so well your brain and stitches it into a single perfect place. The front exterior came from Butternut Farm, a real working farmhouse northeast of Toronto. It became the definitive Green Gables image because the camera loved it, but reality didn't. The house sat near a modern road, with traffic noise bleeding into the quiet. The angles were trapped. Go too wide and you risked revealing contemporary life just outside the frame. And because it was an active farm, the setting kept trying to betray the illusion. So the production did damage control like a period heist. Modern farm equipment had to disappear. The exterior was repainted, and that now iconic white picket fence, built specifically for the shoot. Because the storybook sanctuary wasn't naturally there, it had to be manufactured. Then the trick gets even better. The back of Green Gables was filmed at a completely different location, chosen for cleaner sightlines and landscape control. The swap is invisible because the edit never lets you compare too much at once. Your memory fills in what the camera refuses to show. And the heart of the home, the place where the series lives emotionally, that didn't exist on any farm at all. Every interior scene was filmed on a soundstage, built to match the exterior so precisely it feels like one continuous space. That stage gave Sullivan total control, quiet sound, consistent light, and the freedom to move the camera close enough to catch the smallest shifts in Anne, Matthew, and Marilla's faces. The moments that make Green Gables feel sacred would have been impossible inside a real farmhouse. So Green Gables isn't a location, it's a construction. A front borrowed from one farm, a back borrowed from another, and an interior built from scratch. And somehow, stitched together, it becomes the most believable home in the whole story. Not real, just real enough to haunt you. Number 13. Anne of Green Gables feels like one definitive memory, one version, one ending, one "this is how it goes." That's not how it actually existed. Because it was a Canada-Germany co-production, the miniseries didn't just get dubbed for Germany, it got rebuilt. Kevin Sullivan shot extra material specifically for German television, casting 2 German actors and filming roughly 9 additional minutes of scenes many North American viewers never saw. Not longer takes, not leftovers. Real story beats stitched into an alternate cut that aired as its own complete version. So 2 audiences grew up loving the same Anne, while quietly watching different scenes, different rhythms, different little pieces of her world. But the most important change wasn't for another country. It was for the last impression. Sullivan hated the original finale. The lighting felt dead, the pace felt rushed, and the tone, to him, betrayed what Anne had earned. In that first version, Gilbert's carrots teasing lands like a cute gag. A playful swat, a sitcom button, harmless. Except Sullivan felt it shrank her right at the finish line. So he did the expensive, risky thing most productions avoid. He went back and reshot the ending. The punchline energy got stripped out. In its place came something quieter and braver. No wink, no gag armor, just a moment that lands like recognition and growth. That's the secret behind why this miniseries stuck. It wasn't just adapted, it was corrected until it felt true. Different cuts across the world, one ending rewritten at the last second. And the version that survived doesn't leave you with a joke, it leaves you with a feeling that lingers. Number 14. When Anne of Green Gables aired in 1985, it didn't feel like TV for 1 week and gone. It landed like a national event, the kind of adaptation that made people sit up straighter because it wasn't mocking the book, or rushing it, or sanding it into wallpaper. It was taking the story seriously, and the audience felt that respect immediately. Then the industry started chasing it with trophies. The miniseries stacked awards fast, including an Emmy win, a flood of Gemini Awards, and a Peabody for Kevin Sullivan. That last one is the real signal flare. A Peabody isn't a nice job medal. It's the kind of recognition that says, this matters culturally, that this production did more than entertain. It elevated what television could be, and Sullivan didn't let that moment fade. He turned it into infrastructure. Instead of walking away, he built an entire screen universe around Anne, expanding outward like ripples from one perfect stone drop. First came Anne of Green Gables, the sequel. Then the world got wider with Road to Avonlea, which didn't just spin off the brand. It became its own comfort ritual for viewers who wanted to live in that tone forever. Animated adaptations followed, then later continuations that brought Anne and Gilbert forward into adulthood, and eventually more experimental entries that reshuffled timelines and took bigger swings. For years, Sullivan's version didn't merely exist alongside the novel. It dominated the mental image. For a massive audience, Anne wasn't just Lucy Maud Montgomery's character anymore. Anne was Megan Follows. It was Colleen Dewhurst's Marilla. It was that exact version of Green Gables. That exact emotional temperature. That exact cadence of sweetness and ache. That kind of dominance always has a price. Over time, control of Anne's screen future started pulling away from the Sullivan orbit. Rights tensions, new stakeholders, new plans, and eventually, the inevitable shift. Anne moving forward without the creative force that defined her television identity for decades. But here's the part that proves how deep the impact really goes. Even when Sullivan isn't involved, his version still stands in the room. Every new Anne gets compared to the feeling he captured in 1985. Not the budget, not the costumes, the spirit. Awards are a snapshot. Franchises can fracture. But Anne of Green Gables didn't just succeed, it imprinted. That's the secret of Anne of Green Gables. It isn't just the lines, the music, or the scenery. It's the way it makes the past feel touchable. Like you could step through the screen, hear the wind in the trees, and believe even for a moment that kindness can still win. And once you understand what it took to create create that feeling, the magic doesn't fade, it deepens. If Anne of Green Gables still carries you back to Avonlea and that quiet sense of wonder, you can revisit it by checking the links below for the DVD or multi-version release. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Wonder, you can revisit it by checking the links below for the DVD or multiver release. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. And those were 14 weird facts you probably didn't know about Anne of Green Gables 1985. If you loved revisiting Avonlea with me, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment which classic you want me to cover next. Thanks for watching, and remember, in the words of Anne herself, there's always something to look forward to in tomorrow.